Welcome. This is They Talk Funny, episode 60. And I feel slightly remiss because the gentleman to my, well, this is my right, to my right. I'm not dyslexic. He showed up early, just like I asked him. And the one thing that I wanted to ask him before we got started was how to correctly pronounce his last name. I'm thinking it's Vorhaus. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Not only that, but you put a nice German spin on it. Vorhaus.
Okay. Vorhaus. I've done comedy in Berlin, so it was one of the funnest. Well, not one of. That was one of the funnest weeks. Yeah, it would be one of the funnest weeks I had doing comedy. But welcome, John. For those who are unfamiliar, John is an author, comedian. He is a screenwriter as well. And this is They Talk Funny, so we're going to be talking about the art of writing comedy. John has a new audiobook out. The little book, well, it's not new. It's the audiobook is new, a new version of the little book of Sitcom, and we're going to be giving a giveaway towards the end of the program. So pay attention, jump into the chats, say hello, and when we tell you what the hashtag to put on screen is, then you can enter to win that book. How are you doing, John? Sorry, I'm
doing great. I have 6 things I want to say already.
All right.
First of all, I know it's confusing with the little book of Sitcom. The book itself, in both the print and the ebook versions, are about 10 years old. The audio version, author narrated audio, dates to the same time, but it hasn't been available. And I finally got the rights back, and so now it is available for the first time. And the only reason I mentioned it is the people who got their hands on the audiobook way back when have kind of described it as worth repeated listenings. They find they get a lot out of it. It's almost like you'd think it was a how-to book, but they seem to be enjoying it as a good listen. So that's why I'm out here talking about it. Berlin is a freak show. Do you know why Berlin is a freak show?
Well, it's a great artist city, mainly because of the fact that it was the cross border between the Western and Eastern blocks. So it had the infrastructure for both.
Close, not quite. It's really interesting, and you can make comedy out of this. In Cold War times, if you were a young man living in West Germany, you had to serve in the armed forces for 2 years. But if you were living in West Berlin, you were still a citizen of West Germany, but you didn't have to serve. So all the freaks who didn't want to serve in the military, and there were quite a few of them, they had girlfriends or boyfriends, they all moved to Berlin. And that's how Berlin became such a hotspot for counterculture. It's like an unintended consequence of the Cold War.
I also thought of it was because of the fact that once the wall fell, the property was actually fairly cheap.
That's a good point too, and in fact, it's one of the great regrets of my life. I was in Berlin on a regular basis in 1996 to 99, in and out, over and over again, and I thought I should really buy property here. All this virgin real estate that's never been exposed or flipped or renovated or gentrified, and of course I missed that boat. But you're right. It was an open, free city in a way that no contemporary city really was. Kind of cool. Of course, they have a love parade. But the other thing I wanted to mention, one of my first overseas teaching gigs was in Germany. And it opened like this. I said to the students in my class in Germany, I told all my friends back in Hollywood that I was going to Germany to teach comedy writing. They all thought that was pretty funny. And the class laughed. They had a good spirit about it. But this one guy leans forward. He puts his hands on the table. He says, "These friends of yours, tell us their names." Class, comedy is truth and pain. And what that joke does is surface the fact that Germans are thought to be Nazis, and there's not a damn thing they can do about it. Yeah. And actually, I've used that joke to make that point a lot of times because people really want to know, what's the magic key to comedy? To me, there's 2. Comedy is truth and pain, which means every human experience has an underlying truth of the experience and associated pain or sorrow. Example, if you're in a long-term relationship married relationship, you're probably not having as much sex as you wanted to or you had back in the day. So the truth is less sex, and the pain is, well, less sex. And once you know that, then you know how to make the circumstance funny. You can say, guy says to his buddy, oh, I haven't had sex in a year. And his friend says, oh, you celibate? He says, no, married. And it's just a matter of identifying the truth and pain and then figuring out how to pull back a little bit to make room for the funny.
Well put.
I'll save the other secret for later.
Now, you were teaching in English in Germany, in Berlin.
Correct.
Right? How many languages do you speak, though?
English, a smattering of Spanish, some swear words in Russian. I know what you're going to say. Then how is this possible? There's a couple of things. In the time that I've worked overseas, from the mid-1990s forward, English has penetrated quite well into Northern and Western Europe and into the communities of writers that I would be working with. Even in Eastern Europe, last year or 2 years ago, I was in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. I know it was one of those Balkan countries. Everybody speaks English. They have from the start, especially if they're working in television, film, entertainment, advertising, a lot of other kind of white-collar jobs or pursuits or professions you just don't even get to in Europe and a lot of places in the world if you don't speak English. However, I have also been in many, many places where I've worked with a translator, simultaneous translator by my side, interpreting what I'm saying and sharing it with the audience, or I'll speak into a microphone and someone in a soundproof broadcast booth will interpret what I'm saying and share it through headphones to listeners in the audience. The fun part about that is I get double the value out of my jokes, because I'll be on stage and I'll make a point, I'll tell a joke, and the English speakers will all laugh. Then I'll sit around for 15 seconds waiting for the translation to catch up, and then there's another wave of laugh. So that's kind of fun.
Do you ever worry that the translator's just doing their own jokes? Sorry, bad joke. I had to.
No. It's true. It's true. I didn't do this, but a friend of mine did. She started her lecture and then dropped into, this is the translator speaking voice, saying, she was saying things like, I'm no longer translating what this woman is saying. I don't think she's saying anything important. You need to know about me. I broke up with my boyfriend last night. She was just forcing the interpreter to jump through all these hoops. The game I like to play is called Stump the Interpreter, where I give them words they can't translate. And this is easy for me because I make shit up. I have words that nobody else uses. So, for example, one of my favorite self-coined words is jokeoid. You'll find this in my book, The Comic Toolbox, How to Be Funny Even If You're Not. And what's it talking about is sometimes you've got a joke that's structured correctly, looks like a joke, sounds like a joke, has a setup, has a punchline. It's just not funny. So structurally, it's a joke, but it's not funny. I call that a jokeoid. And it's helpful to people who are writing jokes because then they can look at a joke that doesn't work. And they no longer have to feel bad about it. They don't say, oh my God, this joke doesn't work, I suck. Instead, they can say, oh, I recognize that as a jokeoid, and I know what to do to fix it. I just need to add or subtract or move elements around until the funny idea is positioned in such a way that it'll actually be a joke and not an imitation of a joke. All of which is by way of saying that when I throw that at the translator, the interpreter, they have no idea where to go with that, which delights me.
I've played, well, I have worked with sign language interpreters before, but then working at Just for Laughs, when we had sign language interpreters, a lot of the comedians took that as a challenge to do as much onomatopoeia as possible. And some of them would take it to try to figure out what is the sign for the word fuck, and just say it like 15 times to see if they
just
do it
to see the
times.
I'm not sure. Another principle of comedy that I lean on heavily is this: a thing isn't funny to the person it's happening to, but it's funny to the people watching. And this is useful if you're writing stand-up if you're writing sitcom, for example, then you want to take an Al Bundy or Homer Simpson and just torture them. And it's funny for the audience because it's not happening to them and they are, in a literal or figurative sense, a cartoon. But I have a feeling that if I'm in a room and I'm being interpreted and I'm making life hard for my interpreter, I'm probably not doing a service to anybody. It might be amusing to me. It might even be amusing to the audience. But the butt of the joke is right there. and
they're a
that
real
person is doing that person is a professional doing a tough job. It it would be like if you met a carpenter, and if you said a word hammer, they would swing their arm like a hammer, and you could do it every time, and they'd have to do it every time, and it would be funny up to a certain point, but fundamentally disrespectful. And so I'd probably have some fun with it, but I wouldn't go so far as to make the interpreter suffer for the amusement of everyone around. That's just me.
No, true. And you did mention the cartoon value of Al Bundy and Homer Simpson. This was the reason why I asked what languages you speak, because I'm trying to think which. I don't know if it was on your IMDb or if it was from your website or elsewhere. You were the head writer for Married with Children in Russia, the Russian language version. And and I assume that your name was either Dutch or German with Vorhaus. Which would it be?
It's German.
It is German. Okay, Vorhaus. So I assumed that you possibly, like, I was trying to figure out how many languages you did speak, but it's you managed to be the head writer just
for
working through
a Russian version of Married with Children. How does that happen? First of all, even though I don't have languages, I have cultural awareness. And because I've taught and trained writers in so many different countries, I've gotten very used to the idea of going in saying, I don't know what's funny here, but I know how to find out. I know how to ask the right questions that will help the people I'm working with tell me the relationship between culture and comedy. To put it in a Russian context, Russian comedy is all about suffering. Just best described in the following word. This is one of the few words in Russian I know. It's da ladna, and it translates basically as yes, gladly. And it's only ever used ironically. Like, go get me a cup of coffee, would you please? Da ladna. And that's kind of the Russian zeitgeist, or it was at the time when I was there. In terms of pure information, I was working for Sony Pictures International on a Sony project, Sony being Married with Children being a Sony property. So I had the resources of Sony at my disposal, which includes a full-time interpreter standing by. I had my interpreter, and she worked with me directly. So getting to know someone as an interpreter and building a relationship with her and with the rest of my writing staff kind of minimized, let's say, the problem of having a story meeting. Because we all understand it's going to be a little slower than we'd like. But on the other hand, we all have a little bit more time to think, because some time will be spent with interpretations or translations going back and forth. So yeah, it's a trade-off, but it's not without value. The written words are a little more challenging because a lot can be lost in translation. So my involvement would carry through the story outline to the point where I felt like the story was really working as well as it needed to work. And then when it went from story to script, I didn't pay too much attention to it, because at that point in sitcom, we're getting down to the question of, well, how does this line sound to the ear? Will it get a laugh from a native speaker? I won't know that. And so I just say, my trusted colleagues, you're going to have to make the best of that. The thing that I learned in working in Russia is they use this line on me a lot, my writers. They would say to me, but it's funny in Russian, with a much more authentic Russian accent than that. And I wasn't sure if it was in fact funny in Russian. There were three possibilities. Legitimately funny in Russian, and I just don't get it because I don't have the cultural context. Legitimately funny in Russian, and I just don't get it because something was lost in literal translation. Not at all funny in Russian, but the writers are too lazy or scared to change it for something better. Now, that third possibility is a real possibility. Doesn't matter whether the writer is Russian, American, Ukrainian, Martian, doesn't matter. Writers would rather defend a joke than change a joke. That's kind of a universal truth.
Yes.
So my job on the down at the bottom of this question, how do you make comedy in a culture that you don't know? The answer is you figure out where your writers are at, you figure out whether you can trust them, and you figure out what version of reality they're going to present to you. Literally, there were some writers who would say to me, it's funny in Russian, you just don't get it. And I would say, okay, I accept that. And then other writers would say, it's funny in Russian and you just don't get it. And I'd say, let's discuss it a little more. Let me satisfy myself that it's funny in Russian, which is really my way of saying, let me pressure test this joke a little bit and find out whether it needs to be replaced.
So it's also, I don't fully trust you. There's a friend of mine is he's more of a storyteller, but he actually did the Fringe circuit the year before COVID with a play based on his life experience called Happy-ish, a Russian immigrant's guide to smiling. And very funny. So he did get into now with the Russian language, though. Sentence structure is slightly different. Like a comedy like tool
Rhythm.
that we have is always to have the funny point be the last note in the
Yes.
last syllable said, or as close to the last syllable as said. Did that ever kind of obstruct? Did you have problem getting to that, or?
Not a big problem in Russia, but a huge problem in Romania. I made 3 pilots and 1 television show in Romania. And here's what I learned. Romanian is a very formal language, rigid, like orthodox, conservative. You don't mess with the Romanian language. It's a Latin language. It was Romanian, Roman, Rome. It's one of it's a cousin to French, Italian, Spanish.
Yeah. The Romance language.
If you construct a sentence in Romanian incorrectly, Romanians will think you're an idiot, and they will mock you. Like you just don't mess with the language. But as you said, sitcom is a much more fluid, shortcutting, rhythm-based. A little bit taken out here, a little bit added there, a little bit of nuance and estimate, and sometimes, an emphasis, and sometimes you just have to rebuild the sentence on grammatically incorrect grounds. So part of our job, my team's and mine, was not only to make a sitcom that would sound right to the Romanian ear, but also get them used to the idea that we're going to start changing the language so that we can make it funnier, and we kind of need their permission to break the rules that they're used to. This is under the heading of something that everybody does whenever they make a sitcom. They ask themselves, what are the rules of this world? What promises am I making to my audience that they will expect me to keep week after week after week? In the pilots that I shot, one of the things I did with my Romanian partner who was writing the dialogue was, let's see if we can push the language out of shape to the limit that they'll allow us to now, because that will give them the idea that we're going to push the language some more. And then we can get them to accept this rule. Normal rules of Romanian grammar don't apply, and then they'll come along for the ride. You're starting to see, I imagine, Paul, that when you take an American TV show, or when you're an American making TV in other countries, it's not just a matter of story, character, joke. It's operations management, people management, psychology, international relations, cultural understanding, grammar. And I didn't know all of this when I started traveling and teaching overseas, but as I reflect on it now, a quarter of a century of doing it, what a blessing it's been to my life to have the opportunity to use so many skills in the name of helping writers be better writers.
Most definitely. Now, okay, if I'm going to just jump a little bit, you have is it 27 books?
I'm going to say 26.
26?
Well, I'm working on the 27th, so I'm a little bit pregnant with the with the little book of Standup right now.
Right.
26 books, roughly evenly divided among how-to books concerning writing and creativity,
poker,
novels, and 10 books on poker.
There is. I mean, well, I guess that creativity would cover like the white belt in art.
A white belt in art, creativity rules, Comic Toolbox, Little Book of Sitcom. See if I can name them all. Comedy Writing for Life, How to Write Good. And I think that's it. and Little Book of Stand-Up to come. The poker. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the point I wanted to kind of get to is the fact that you how can I say this? Con artistry is one of your skills.
How can I put this? Are you a con artist? Yes, I've written. No, it's true. I've written 3 novels about con artists, and you don't come by that information by accident. I would like to be this kind of con artist, Paul. I would like it to be that everything that I said up till this point is completely made up, and not just made up, but made up on the spot. That would be really exciting to me. I'm not that kind of con artist. I'm the kind of con artist. I'm a rhetorical con artist, or a hypothetical con artist. I like to imagine the way schemes work, but I don't really want to execute on them myself. But when I started writing novels about con artists, that was tremendous fun because I really got to scratch that itch. You know, as a writer, I don't much care for research, but if the research is interesting to me, then I don't mind doing it. So I try to look for topics that I'm already engaged with. Poker is an example. If I'm going to take a deep dive into this, it better be something that I'm interested in taking a deep dive in, not just learning for the sake of learning it. Which is why my novels have been, let me put it this way, have been profoundly rewarding to me and financially rewarding to almost nobody.
And those novels are available. Let's just get that out on your website, johnvorhaus.com. And just for anyone that's interested, you can actually see a lot of the covers on his website. Now, my thing was how much, because when I'm talking about stand-up and stand-up comedy, I talk about the illusion of artifice. And a big part of being a con artist is also misdirection. Now, you have done stand-up, and I'm assuming that you've used misdirection in your setups. Does that also translate to writing sitcoms with like red herrings or false flags being thrown?
In a certain kind of sitcom, the story is driven by misunderstanding. The characters lack a piece of information that the audience has, and the audience gets their enjoyment in the space between what they know and what the characters don't know. An example of this is the dead houseplant story. Character A thinks character B is dying, but it's really not character B who's dying, but only character B's houseplant. So the character will be misled into thinking a bad thing is happening. The audience will know the truth, and they will get their enjoyment from having that God, what do they call it? The God account or the God filter. Anyway, God user.
Immediately in my head, I'm already thinking of one line. Is it,
What's that?
Well, what happens after? Well, probably just go into the compost.
Yeah, really, really. Well, we're just gonna shred them and spread them on the lawn. Oh, that's so cold. Oh, no. I feel that mulch was in its future. No. Misdirection in con artistry works a little bit different. What drives good cons is pressure, artificially placed on the victim to move the victim out of a comfortable space and into a bad decision-making space. I'm thinking about a time when I got ripped off on the streets of Managua, Nicaragua, on a currency exchange. I was a dumbass, and I thought it was a good idea to change money on the street. And I knew it was probably wasn't a great idea, but it was adventurous, and I was into adventure. And the guy took my money, and he started counting out the money he was giving me. But all the while, he's looking around saying, we got to do this fast. The police are going to come here any second. Let's get this done. And he shoved the money in my hand and disappeared. And I went to count the money, and I thought, this doesn't seem like as much as I should have. In fact, it seems like it's half as much as I should have. What happened? And I had that question in my mind, what happened for 10 years or more, during which time I started writing con artist novels. Then 10 years later, I went back to Nicaragua, and I was thinking about that earlier moment, and it suddenly occurred to me, I got it. I know how he did it. It took 10 years to figure out the scam. Do you know what it was?
Money
He
was
took a
folded
stack
over?
of bills, folded in half, counted each bill twice.
Yeah.
And if I had been paying attention, I would have caught it. But he took pains to make sure that my attention was elsewhere.
Yes.
So 3-card Monte, Bernie Madoff, it's all the same. Fascinating to think about.
It's fascinating to hear about.
I was thinking about people are, maybe I shouldn't go here because it's political, but somebody was arrested here in Southern California last week for stealing blank vaccination cards, presumably so that he can sell them to people who would rather carry a forged vaccination card than get a vaccination. Yeah. And I'm just trying to figure out what the logic of that is, because it has to be as easy to get a vaccination as to carry around a bogus card. But like I said, can of worms, maybe we don't go there.
Yeah.
Anyway, scams are not dead. That's the point.
Oh, as long as there's gullibility, there will be scams, and as long as there's humans, there's gullibilities. Now, what led you in your life into writing as much? I mean, you've obviously you've lived a very storied life. You went to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I graduated. Sorry, I was just going to say I graduated from there in 1977, and started working as an advertising copywriter in Boston. And I got a year or two into that career, and I realized that a bad thing was happening. I was succeeding pretty well, and people were dangling inducements in my path. Well, we'll promote you. We'll pay you more money. We'll give you more responsibility. You can be a superstar in advertising. And it kind of filled me with a sense of dread, because I realized that if I stayed on this path, then I'd probably wake up at the age of 40 wondering why I had squandered my youth trying to make the world safe for advertising. It's not where I belonged, and I knew. So I made the bold choice to quit that job. Everybody thought it was crazy, especially when I announced that I was going to become a singer-songwriter and play songs and play guitar and sing songs on the folk circuit all over New England. And I did that for 5 years. And it took me 5 years to realize there were two things I couldn't do particularly well: sing and play guitar. But I was writing great stuff, and I was really enjoying sharing what I was writing with an audience. So I made a deal with myself. I said to myself, clearly this singer-songwriter stuff's not working out for you. You need to be a different kind of writer. And the only way you're going to be the kind of writer you need to be is to do two things: move to another place, Los Angeles or New York, and leave singer-songwriting behind. Never pick up the guitar again. That makes it sound more dramatic than it was, but I just realized that in order to advance, I needed to set something aside, pass through it, and move on. And this actually created a powerful rhythm in my life where I would investigate new things, learn a lot about them, pass through them, and move on. And in some cases, I've had a tremendous amount of failure, like singer-songwriter. I mean, I made an album, sold a copy, 2, maybe 3, I don't know. Hard to tell through the sands of time. But others I was more successful with, Sitcom, and especially traveling and teaching. Super successful in that. But the through line, the motor, the engine that you were looking for is the desire for the new. I've always been driven by new things, new opportunities. If I haven't done it before, that's a very, very strong inducement for me to do it, almost no matter what it is, unless it's going to get me killed or arrested or in trouble with my wife or my mother. I guess I can think of a few other reasons I might not do it. But
list keeps on getting longer.
But that pretty much describes the nature of all of my career pivots. I'm like a magpie. I see a shiny object and I go for it.
Oh, I did not know about your previous album. Now, how often had you tried stand up itself? Like,
off and on.
What brought you into stand up? What was the first stand up show that you remember seeing live?
That's a good question. Who did I see live? Well, my comic influences are in reverse order of importance: Monty Python and Firestein Theater. I'm sure you know Monty Python. You might not know Firestein Theater.
I don't know exactly where it is in the stack, but I have at least one Firestein Theater album. So a lot of U.S. political comedy and sketch.
But also surrealist. In here,
Martin
this will
Mull
make
was that he a member? No.
no Martin Mull. Martin Mull and his fabulous furniture. But I know what you're thinking of. No, I don't know what you're thinking of. Let's put it this way. Totally lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
Well, you were talking about Firestein Theater.
Oh, yeah. When I was a kid, when I was coming up, when I was a teenager, Firestein Theater and Monty Python were like call and response. And Bill Cosby, pre Bill Cosby.
I was learning about him. Yeah.
You would say a line in a party. You walk into a party and you'd quote a line from Monty Python or Firestein Theater, and somebody in the room, usually another guy, would quote the response. And immediately you knew that's a guy I'm going to get along with. That's my next friend, because we had that same frame of reference. So the comics that I was drawn to, early Steve Martin, early Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Cheech and Chong, another great example of
Dave's not here, man.
That's Dave's not here. You walk into a room and say, Dave's not here. You've told the room everything they need to know about you. Well, you've told half the room, and the other half doesn't know what you're talking about. Fuck them. You don't care about that.
And a quarter of the room is hoping you're carrying.
Yeah, exactly. So those were my influences. I wrote funny songs and did patter when I was being a singer-songwriter. But when I came out to Los Angeles, part of what I needed to do was pick a lane, choose a lane. And I did some stand-up when I first came out here, but I also explored situation comedy, and I gained much more traction much more quickly along that path. I was writing and selling stuff in less than 6 months after I got out here. So that kind of made an argument that I couldn't refuse, and I focused my energy on that. Oh, go ahead.
I noticed that we do have some people watching. If anyone has any questions for John, please just drop them into the chat. And I'm going to make the first little bit of announcement. If you're watching and you want a chance to win the little book of Sitcom, that's the correct title?
Mm-hmm. In your choice of versions.
In your choice of version, be it ebook or audiobook. Or physical copy, did you say?
Or print, print copy.
Yeah, print copy. You just have to type hashtag sitcom into the chat. You'll be entered in for a draw that we're going to do at the end of the show. So just as a reminder for everybody, it is hashtag sitcom. I'm going to leave that up for a little bit so people can see it.
And for a modest extra fee, I will fly to your hometown, sit in your living room, and read the text out loud. You must be 100% satisfied, or your money cheerfully retained.
Cheerfully retained.
Cheerfully retained. That's that misdirection you were talking about, right? Everything in the line says that the last word is going to be refunded.
Yes.
And even when you get into the word retained, you're halfway through it before it turns. You must be 100% satisfied, or your money cheerfully refunded. Obviously, no, tained. And that's the misdirection you speak of as a comic tool. That's how it's used.
Oh, Lynn Alex is in Alberta. Says that she's enjoying listening to this interview, and John is fascinating. So
fascinating. Thank you, Lynn Alex, or if I may call you Alex Lynn.
Oh, and she put in the sitcom no refunds.
No refunds. What's the companion line to that? So you don't forget, order before midnight tonight, and it will include the entire state of Rhode Island at no extra charge.
That is, yes. I think not the wedding album. What was it called? It was the White House Wedding. That's the Firestein Theater album that I have.
I know the one you mean. Go much further back in time. Trouble is, the further back you go, the more authentic the material gets, but the harder it is to understand without cultural framework.
Exactly. Really hard. And as a Canadian, I mean, U.S. culture has been well exported around the world. You're proof of that because of the fact that you've taken American sitcoms and helped launch them in other countries where English is not the speaking language. Spoken language.
Canadian, not so much. Yeah. Are you following, just speaking of Canadian sitcom, I'm following the story of the Kim's Convenience controversy. Do you know about this?
The controversy? No, I know that it was canceled after winning a bunch of awards. What's...
Now there are allegations of racism on the part of the writing staff against Asians.
Yes.
White writers imposing racist or culturally insensitive choices on Asian actors. It's in your local press. I mean, it was in my local press, and I'm in Los Angeles, so.
Yeah. I know that two of the stars have of that show have gone on to much bigger things right now. Simu Lee is the next Marvel superhero with Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings, and I'm forgetting his name. I should know his name, but the father is actually now in The Mandalorian, and we'll be getting it in one of the spin-off shows coming from that as well.
Now, you mentioned this idea of exporting culture. I look at a show like this. This is something I discovered. Americans, when I was coming up, Americans didn't know about the rest of the world. It's like they couldn't find Romania on a map of Romania. And it's still true. But back then, it was even more one way, culturally one way. All the culture flowed from America to other places in the world. But I'm 13 years old, staying up till midnight to catch reruns of the British sitcom Red Dwarf, or No Honestly, or Blackadder on a PBS station, after hours. So I was always interested in what other cultures were doing to make humor anyhow. And I kind of get as much enjoyment out of solving the cultural puzzle as I do out of getting the laughs. A lot of times I see the laughs coming, they don't really do that much for me. But I look at a show like Kim's Convenience as an example. There are a lot of other examples. I just really like trying to figure out what's going on. What are they speaking to? Based on what they're saying, I can figure out what issues they're trying to address or what cultural norms they're signposting. And I either get it or I don't get it. But if I don't get it, I never say this show is bad because I don't get it. I only say, I don't get it. Isn't that interesting? And if I could just mention, this idea is really the key to good creative practice, no matter what you're doing, whether you're writing sitcom or doing stand-up or painting or making music, anything at all. We look at our work through a subjective filter. We look at what we've done and we say to ourselves, I like that, therefore it's good, therefore I'm good, therefore I like me. Or we look at it and we say, I don't like that, therefore it's bad, therefore I'm bad, therefore I don't like me. And the problem is that it puts all this attention on how your work makes you feel. And because all of your attention is going to how your work makes you feel, you can't give all your attention to the more important question, how can you make the work go forward? What can you do to advance it from where it is to where it needs to be? So I like to tell my students, a thing isn't a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing that happens. A joke isn't a good joke or a bad joke. It's just the joke that's there. And if it's doing its job, then fine. You can call it good. I just say it's doing its job. If it's not doing its job, it doesn't mean it's a bad joke. It might be a good joke in the wrong place or a good joke that's currently in jokoid form. But until I detach from that ego, that ouch my feelings mentality, I can't improve the work. And here's the thing. If I can't improve the work, then the work doesn't improve. But if I can improve the work, then the work improves. And guess what? I feel better because I'm doing better work. So it turns out it's very important to ignore the ego. But when you ignore the ego, the work improves and you feel better. Therefore, you're serving the ego. And thus we arrive at a Zen conundrum. To serve the ego, ignore the ego. If people are listening and they're taking notes, or even not taking notes, just sort of sitting there slack-jawed looking at their computer monitor, I would say if you can take that away, to serve the ego, ignore the ego, you're going to make great strides in your practice right away.
That definitely sounds T-shirt worthy. To serve the ego, ignore the ego. Lynn had dropped this into the chat a little bit earlier. I didn't want to ignore it. I wish there was more diversity on screen. So sad. It's not just the on screen though. It's making sure that it's an honest representation. That's why the complaints about all white writers' room, etc.
Can I just give you a glimpse of the future here, based on the past? We want television to reflect our values, and eventually it will. There's a relationship between television and culture. Television holds a mirror up to culture, but it's not a reflection of a realistic reflection. It's an aspirational reflection. It says to the audience, this isn't what you are, this is what you want to be. And a great way to see it is in the evolution of the way gay characters have been depicted in American sitcoms over the last 30 years. We started out with Ellen, who spent 3 years on the air notionally heterosexual before she came out as lesbian, strategically giving her audience a long, long time to fall in love with her before she gave them this challenging piece of information. By the way, she never had sex with anybody, never even had a girlfriend as far as I can remember. So in a sense, she was a rhetorical lesbian, which made it easy for an audience to accept a hard concept. Also, Americans are much less afraid of female homosexuals than male homosexuals, so that made it easy. It set the stage for Will and Grace, first American sitcom to have main characters who are out gay men, which in turn set the stage for Modern Family, which introduced the idea of a gay married couple with children. So you can see that there is a cultural evolution taking place. It's reflected by television and it's driven by television. So to Lynn Alex's point about diversity, diversity is coming in television because it's coming in society as well. And as long as society and television continually to positively reinforce and mutually reinforce the idea of promoting diversity, you're going to see progress in that area. Not as fast as you would like, but definitely heading in that direction.
Well said. I've produced a lot of live stand-up shows, etc., and I always try to find diverse voices. I never intentionally said I wanted to have like more women or more people of color. I'm just tired of people with the same point of view. It doesn't matter what color you are, if you have the same point of view, or what orientation, the same point of view, it comes across. And people who go for tokenism when they're producing a show just kind of like, it doesn't ring true. So you found an Indian guy with a beard who wears flannel to go up there on stage with all of your white guys who have a beard and wear flannel.
And wear flannel.
Yeah, it's you're not changing the voice. You're just changing like what your lighting options will be.
Thought might also be given to what the audience is in that context, because I see a lot of comics who are notionally diverse, but they're playing their diversity to a non-diverse audience. That is to say, they create a persona that showcases their diversity in opposition to what they assume their audience to be: white, heteronormative, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just a matter of not having, what was the word you used, tokens. It's a matter of helping every comic of whatever orientation or background or intentionality understand and accept the power they have to communicate their version of reality to the world around them, rather than making the assumption that the only way they're going to succeed is by faithfully reflecting the reality the audience is expecting to see. Not sure if I made that quite clear. Let me try one more pass at it. It seems to me that in comedy you have power. There's power in comedy, this we know. What kind of power is it? Broadly speaking, there's the power to lift up or the power to knock down. Now, both of those powers are legitimate powers. I myself am a lifter-upper, but I also recognize that comedy is iconoclasm. Comedy is social commentary. Comedy rips things apart. It's part of comedy's job. So if somebody wants to be a knocker-downer, that's fine with me. That's their choice. But all of us are lost in the current space. We don't know what jokes we can tell, what jokes we can't tell, what areas of political correctness we need to support or fight against. And we're lost in this space because we're trying to find a set of rules and follow the set of rules. What I've arrived at is this idea: if I'm a lifter-upper and I write a joke, it's simple enough for me to look at that joke and ask, is this joke going to lift up? If it's going to lift up, then it belongs in my act. If it's not going to lift up, it doesn't belong in my act. It's much easier for me to control the space around me that is socially and politically treacherous right now if I have an internal compass that I can rely upon. And this is a great example of that. If this joke is not going to make somebody feel better, or if this joke is being told at the expense of someone, and there is a chance to hurt, that's not going to lift up, and I'm a lifter-upper, so I ain't going to do it. And I find that makes it much easier to navigate this space, especially for me, an older guy. My norms are 1960s norms and 1970s norms, and it's easy for me to forget where I'm at in the modern world. And I think it's incumbent upon me to do my best. I'm not one of these guys who's going to say, well, I'm too old to learn. You kids, you'll just have to manage on your own. And if I want to call you whatever derogatory term from my youth, it's just because I'm old and I'm excused from it. That's not what I'm interested in. Yeah. I'm interested in being a good citizen, as good a citizen as I was at 25 on the day I die.
Yeah. Kudos to you on that. That's what everyone should be aspiring to. You have said something just now, which threw back to a question I wanted to ask earlier. Now you watch the old British sitcoms like Blackadder, Red Dwarf, etc. on PBS. The head writer from Blackadder, as of the second season on, Ben Elton, cut his teeth writing a sitcom whose goal it was to tear down the rules of sitcom. The Young Ones.
I saw The Young Ones. I didn't realize Ben Elton came out of that, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, Ben Elton, I mean, he had a couple little cameos through the show, but he was the head writer.
Okay.
Rick Mayall, he put most of the best words in Rick Mayall's mouth. But what do you think of that show subverting the expectations of sitcoms? Do you think it's sort of, I mean, Family Guy is an animated version, but it sort of does the same thing.
For the time that I've spent in television networks, some amount of time, not a ton of time, but one thing that I've learned is there's programming and counter-programming, and both are alive at the same time. You want programming that meets the audience expectation, and you want programming that defeats the audience expectation. The Young Ones looks to me like an exercise in counter-programming, not unlike Married with Children. I don't know if you remember, but when Married with Children came out in 1987, that was the peak of the Cosby years, and that was when all the sitcoms were touchy-feely, happy endings, everybody learns a lesson, everybody gets along, and a lot of people hated it. Now here comes the Fox Television Network, brand new in 1987, saying we're not going to succeed with programming, we can only succeed with counter-programming. And so they commissioned Married with Children as, again, an anti-sitcom. And so if you're asking me what I think of The Young Ones, I think that it's following a playbook, the same playbook that Married with Children followed, and a lot of other shows and movies and all kinds of cultural experiences follow. If something works, you work it, and you work it so long that people get tired of it, and then they want something different, so you got to figure out what to give them that's different. Me personally, I love The Young Ones because it challenged me. Again, I was talking earlier about cultural puzzles. That show was a big cultural puzzle for me. I mean, it was probably a cultural puzzle for people in Great Britain, but I didn't mind it.
Live.
I didn't mind the challenge of it, but some viewers don't like a challenge. Yeah. They want their television to be pleasant wallpaper, pleasant moving talking wallpaper. Somebody once described sitcom as something you can make dinner to. Yeah. You know, you have the TV on in the kitchen or even in the other room, and you're listening along and glancing at the screen to check the action. Not a challenge. What's the most challenging sitcom that's on TV today?
I'd have difficulty answering
even naming one. There's one that just I watched on HBO, whatever, Hacks, an aging female comic makes common cause with a disgraced younger stand-up comic.
Okay, I've heard of it. I have yet to watch an episode, though.
You would say of it that it has good food value. By that I mean that there are interesting thoughts and ideas being explored and personalities being uncovered. And again, that's to my taste. You know, I've been trying to watch from the start is Girls, because I never really saw it when it first came out. Do you know the one I mean?
Yeah, I know she's in The Handmaid's Tale now. She was the writer creator behind it.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. Look at us now.
I have a computer right in front of me.
Well, good.
So, and I will probably have to put on my glasses for this. I do want to mention something. Lena Dunham, that's her name.
That's right. Right. Super transgressive. That's all I was going to say. You watch that show and you see things you've never seen on another television show.
Yes. Yeah. Just the hookup culture kind of really being explored, as in, what is a booty call compared to what is a friends with benefits, etc. That's happening. Now, we mentioned Kim's Convenience, which is, despite its controversy, is a considered a Canadian sitcom success. I recently had on, I'm not sure if you're aware, in Canada, stand-up comedy is not considered an art form. So there's no protectionism, etc., for Canadian stand-up artists in many ways. I mean, Jim Madrino's refers to stand-up comedy as the only art form designed to sell beer. If an American, I would
say that's baseball, but okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the only sport designed to sell beer. American comics, I think it's about $40, and they can work for a year in Canada. And for a Canadian to work in the States as a comedian is well over $10,000. Wow. And we have two major broadcasters that receive government funding to make sure that there's Canadian content. And I had the head of the Canadian Association of Stand-Up Comics, which is a fairly new thing where we're trying to be organized like ACTRA for stand-up comedy. And she had stories about people going to pitch meetings to both of the big English broadcasters in Canada and telling them that, here's our stories. We were going to present it. This is our show Bible. We've got several scripts, etc. Everything mapped out for a single season, and then notes for further seasons. And they go, "Oh, this is really good. We really like this. Have you thought about selling it to an American network? Because it's just cheaper for us to buy it from the Americans than produce our own. You'll probably have to switch it to not being set in Canada and not use Canadian actors. But that's that's the nature that we're living with in Canada." So,
and it's part of the overall relationship between Canada and the U.S. and part of a cultural history and future that we're in the middle of. I would say the light on the horizon is streaming platforms. That is international, nationally agnostic streaming platforms that really kind of level the playing field. Because if you have a good idea and you take it to Netflix and they figure they can run it through their algorithm and make it work for 67% of the English-speaking world across the board, they're not going to care whether it came from Canada or the United States or wherever. But also, let's never forget that when you're working in comedy and when you're working in stand-up comedy, you're bucking long odds from day one. You just are. And so half of your job is is making the most of opportunities that are there, but the other half is hacking the system so there are more opportunities for you. Like, the dumb example of this is I'm a stand-up comic and I can't get anybody to come to my shows, so I'll host an open mic. And then at least I'll get the friends of the other people on the open mic to show up. That's a way of bootstrapping or hacking opportunity. If you scale that up to a national level, you're saying to the, what did you call it, the Canadian Association of Stand-Up Comics?
Yes.
That organization turns around and says, you know what, we're not going to sell to producers. We're going to become producers. We're going to curate our members' ideas and commission them to write pilots and present them to buyers in this country and overseas. And we're going to leverage the strength of our membership and obviously the dues of our membership to make it happen, because that's a rising tide that can lift all boats. I'm not saying that would happen or will happen, but I'm saying that is a challenge. I've worked in a lot of countries where there is no sitcom at all. Like, I'm making the first one. And then tell them, you guys, if this works, the audience is going to want more. And if they want more, there's going to be a lot more work for you. But pretty soon there'll be more work than you can handle, which means even if you'd like to keep it all for yourself and make all the money yourself, the only way you can build a sustainable industry is to train the people around you to do it also. so that when the demand is there are practitioners who can meet the supply. I am frustrated by the idea of competition. I hate it when somebody says, I'm not going to help you because you're stealing a job from me. It's existentially wrong, and it's also just vastly impractical.
A lot of comedy clubs in this city and the neighboring cities, like Canada is I think it's about 1/5 larger than the United States. I know that we're running close to an hour here, so I will we'll make sure to do the draw very soon. For those who want to draw on the little book of Sitcom in your choice of formats, we're going to be doing that in a moment. Please just put hashtag Sitcom into the chat. If you're watching on the repeat, please go order yourself a copy from John Vorhaus.com.
You snozzed, you lost. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Catch it when it's live, kids. That's the secret. Where was I going on that? Canada is about, I think, 1/5 larger than the United States, but we have 1/10 of the population density. Mm-hmm. So we are not considered a market to the United States. We're for the amount of travel that a Canadian comedian has to do compared to a U.S. comedian
I wouldn't think about that.
Yeah, it's kind of huge. Now, I think it's somewhere around 90% of the Canadian population is within 25 miles of the U.S. border, but that's that's memory from school. Lynn Alex is saying, so insightful. Where can I take your class?
With 3 question marks.
Three question marks. Yeah.
Let me answer that this way, if I might. Lynn, thank you for that. I rather than give you a rote answer, I invite you to reach out to me. Shoot me an email, and I will engage with you personally and figure out what of my resources will be best for you. And that more broadly, to everybody who's listening, either live or in repeat. If you find that my ideas are intriguing to you, or you think you can get some value out of them, send me an email. We can talk some more. We can have a dialogue. Part of what has made me both satisfied as a human and successful as a professional is having a real open door between myself and people who are getting some value out of my work. So if you consider yourself to be in that category, then HMU on FB, did I get that right? Hit me up on Facebook, or just shoot me an email. It's john.vorhaus@gmail, and there you go. And
you can also reach him through his website as well.
And you can reach me through my website as well. So there are resources for you, Lynn Alex, and also for you, Alex Lynn.
And I want to definitely be respecting your time constraints here, and Lynn will be reaching out to you. Now, this past year has been difficult for most people, obviously. Has it affected you and your work?
Oh boy, has it ever. First of all, I lost 2 summer tours in Europe. And my Comic Toolbox 20th anniversary tour, that got washed away. And then this year's 2020 tour also got washed away. And I usually spend 6 to 8 weeks doing Comic Toolbox presentations in large groups and small, and consulting on projects in different countries all over Europe. So missed out on that. I accepted that pretty quickly. I just, it's a luxury crisis. Then I started deriving the benefits. I started doing a lot more art, visual art. And the keystone of my pandemic, I did a project called the 100 Head Project, where I did 100 self-portraits in 100 days as a fundraiser for Doctors Without Borders, and also as an answer to the pandemic, and also as a personal challenge to myself. Came out of that, I had transitioned. When I went into it, I was kind of like, I'd like to be an artist. And when it came out of it, I said, well, I guess I'm an artist, because it put such artistic demands on me that the question, am I legitimately an artist, kind of went away. So I got that out of it. Also started doing a ton of Zoom stand-up, sit-down stand-up, because I could do it from the privacy of my own home, naked from the waist down. And that's what inspired me to write the little book of stand-up, because I'm the kind of guy.
Shouldn't say little and naked from the waist down.
Yeah, really. Just the big book of stand-up, the overwhelmingly massive, the mind-bogglingly huge. No, I find if you set the expectations low and exceed them, in books and in sex, that usually is the best way to go. Anyway, that's what inspired me to write the little book of stand-up, because I'd learned just enough to be dangerous, and that's usually when I decide it's time to write a book.
Just a reminder for those who want in on the contest, it's hashtag Sitcom, as you see on screen right now. But David Levy has a question. Have you seen the new season of Master of None?
I have not. It's
You
on
have
my
not.
list.
It's on the list. And before we go into this, I know that you were trying to step delicately around political things. In your country, there have been a lot of social action movements. There's the Black Lives Matter. There's what happened in on January 6th. There's been a transition of power on your of leaders. How do you feel about what has happened? Do you think I know that you want to remain positive. Do you think the gains that have happened from Black Lives Movement, do you think that will continue? It will hold up, or is it going to be a blip?
Just as there's a history of conflict, not conflict, but cultural struggle, let's say, between the United States and Canada that continues to this day. There is a line of conflict between black and white America that's been in America since the present and continues to this day. Problems solved? Not by a long shot. There are still plenty of people who wish we could go back to the good old days, for instance, when Democrats and Republicans got along. But if you look carefully, you understand Democrats and Republicans only got along because they both agreed that only white people mattered. This is the idea of the 50s Eisenhower consensus democracy. Sure, it's consensus if it's the guys with all the money and power agreeing to keep all the money and power. So there's that. In storytelling, and I talk about this probably in my book Creativity Rules, there's this idea that the truth is revealed under pressure. You put a character under pressure, you force that character to confront a new understanding of the truth. Don't put them under pressure. They're not going to change. They're not going to learn and grow. Like Luke Skywalker doesn't become a Jedi if the stormtroopers don't kill his family and put him under the pressure to run for his life. I think the COVID pandemic has put America under unprecedented pressure, not just unprecedented, unexpected. Also, the consequences are completely unexpected. The uprising that we saw last summer obviously came as much out of COVID as it came out of black and white relations, or let's say COVID shone a light on the problem of systemic racism. We're seeing it better than we saw before because we're being forced to. Whether we embrace it or not, that's an individual and a collective thing. Jury's not out. Donald Trump's going on the road week after next to start doing post-presidential rallies. And that sends a chill down my spine because I thought we were done with that guy. So, yeah. Jury's not out.
All right.
But I would say for those of us who are in America at present, or wherever you are, you got to decide which side you're going to be on. Pick a side, take a stand, make some moves in your direction. Otherwise, you're just wasting your mojo.
Exactly. And the Black Lives Matter movement was not just a U.S. thing. It was global. It was here in Canada. There's a lot that needs to be done in Canada. Our crisis with natives as well has been a horrible 12 months in that regard as well. The discovery of 215 children's bodies outside of a residential school in Kamloops, and then a further 130 some outside another residential school in Alberta. What happened in Nova Scotia with the native-owned fishery. It's just we have a lot to work on as well, and our treatment of visible minorities can definitely improve. Not to leave it on a downer note, we're going to be giving away the little book of Sitcom.
It's the end of the world, but check out this book.
Yeah, and I'm well, you know what? It says only one entry.
I bet it's Lynn Alex.
I'm kind of thinking it's Lynn Alex as well. Oh no, there's two entries. We got two entries. So here comes the horse race. There we go, flashing between David and Lynn.
That's great.
It's almost like they're morphing their faces. And
wow, this is exciting.
There we are. Well, confetti and everything.
I love
so apologies to Lynn, but
all right.
David.
Well, sorry, I was going to say, David. So you're going to reach out to? Is that the protocol? He's going to reach out to me by email, and I'm going to take care of him.
Or I was going to get his details, which one he prefers, and I can make sure that it happens. The communication happens between the two of you.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
And so, we've got a very sad Lynn Alex at this
No,
point.
hey, Lynn, you shoot me an email. I'll find something from my library to share with you. It might not be the little book of sitcom, but it will be a tasty treat, I promise.
And
maybe you can turn that frowny face into a smiley face.
Well, let's hope that we can. There we are. Oh, well, we got to damn it. We got to damn it on that one. But there will be something, Lynn. That is for sure. And
well, she's just been such a supporter of this podcast.
She is. She is. I don't know if this is a podcast. David Levy is. Lynn deserves it. I just tuned in. Tuned in.
Well, sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, David. I don't know what to tell you. You get a book, and you get a book. You all get a book.
Woo! Wow, it's like being on Oprah. Yeah. There is. I definitely, if you're willing to stick around for a little bit, I'd love to talk with you a bit more. But if you would,
I have a hard out at my 6:15, so
okay. So
we got another 10 minutes anyhow.
8 minutes. Very quickly, then, what are your hopes for the future? What are, I know you mentioned something bad on the horizon, but what is your hopes for the future, for both career-wise as well as culturally and cross-culturally between our two countries and more?
I'm going to answer that by roundabout means. I'm collaborating or consulting on a project in South Africa, because it's like you do, you know. And the central question of the work is humanity's ability to solve its problems going to catch up to its ability to create problems in time? I'm hopeful that it will. That's where my hope for the future lies. Can't stop evolution, can't put the genie back in the bottle. Got to find solutions that work based on your understanding of the problem and the solution. We've been doing this as humans all along. My problem, it's dark when the sun sets. I need a solution. Here's a solution. I'll build a fire. That's a good solution, but if I'm not careful with it, I burn down my house and the forest around me, and I die. So not a good solution. Going to have to learn how to control fire. Now I get fire under control. That allows me to organize bigger groups, eventually cities, states, etc. They compete. They go to war. That's a problem. We don't want that. Got to find some way to solve that problem. We have been creating and solving problems throughout humanity, throughout our existence as humans. That's kind of what makes us different. The issue now is that our ability to create problems is global in nature. It has been since World War II, though, since the advent of the atomic bomb. Once the bomb is here, we have the capacity to self-destruct, and every day we kind of have to make the choice not to use that capacity. With global warming, with global climate change, clock's ticking. I have a lot of faith in the creative hacking capabilities of humans and science. I don't have as much faith in political will. But I also know that the global organism that is Gaia, the Earth, has a capacity to withstand our meddling that we don't really know. We're creating climate change, which is bad for us. But the changes that it's making to the world is saying, I've been existing in change for 4 billion years. This is nothing new to me. A degree more, a degree less, it's just a change of state. Oh, look, there's more ice. Oh, now look, there's less ice. Doesn't matter to Gaia. It matters to us because we got to live through it. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see water wars. We're going to see climate wars, famine, jihad. No, I don't mean jihad. I mean religious wars of all kinds as people compete for less and less resources. But just like in the United States, the 13 colonies figured out they were better off being one nation. Eventually, all of humanity will figure out that in terms of everybody's survival, it's better if we cooperate than if we compete. So we figure that out, we're going to get there. We don't. Hope there's a place for stand-up in the post-apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. I think I saw that in Beyond Thunderdome. Last for a spot. Lynn Alex says, thanks for a great interview. I'm thanking you as well. John Vorhaus, Thank you very much. Yes, Vorhaus. Wow, I just took a mind blank for a moment. Thank you very much for being part of They Talk Funny. This has been episode 60. And look out for the past episodes for any comedian that you want to learn from. And thank you very much for spreading your knowledge with us, John.
My pleasure. Go sports team.
Go